Okay. So I'm just going to. Okay. So I'm Gary J. Byrne. I wrote the book Crisis of Character, and my book is about my life basically, but it mostly revolves around my time in the U.S. Secret Service from about 1991 to 2003. I was in the Secret Service Uniform Division, and the book revolves around that time and basically what I experienced protecting the Clintons, Bill and Hillary Clinton. And typically Secret Service personnel don't talk about their time protecting people. Over the years, people have written many books. Secret Service agents have written some books, but this is, best of my knowledge, the first time that a uniform division officer like myself has written a book. Originally I thought I would take this information or secrets or whatever you want to call it, the things that I saw, I thought I would take it to the grave. But a few years ago, things changed, and I realized that one of the things we're missing in this country is openness. Nobody ever wants to talk about transparency. They want to talk about other people being transparent. I thought I was compelled after doing some thought and some praying, to be honest with you, that it was time to be transparent about the Clintons and who they really are, and the real Bill and Hillary Clinton. When people voted Bill Clinton into office in the early 1990s, they got Bill and Hillary. And it's also my fear that if Mrs. Clinton is elected, that we'll get Hillary and Bill and the same corruptness that we saw in the 90s, scandal after scandal, whether it was sex or drugs or bad policy or I can't remember them all. You name it, it turned into a scandal. Poor Mr. Foster's suicide. So I decided to come clean. And a lot of people, my critics, have said, you're not supposed to talk about these things, and which is true. But my story is a little bit different. I'm the first person that was ever employed by the Secret Service to be compelled to testify against the sitting president in a criminal case, and that was the intern case, Monica Lewinsky. And so I was subpoenaed 6 times, and I went with the policies that the Secret Service set up at the time. And what they wanted to do was to keep us employees from testifying. But what they were kind of doing, which we saw at the time, clearly I saw this while I was writing the book, was they were also manipulating the system with the Justice Department, because the people that ran the Secret Service at that time did not want to testify themselves. They had the information that Judge Starr wanted, but they didn't want to ruin their lives or careers. So they pushed some uniform division people forward. Some young agents, one senior agent that wasn't even there at the time, and we ended up having to testify. And so we did. We fought it for as long as we could. Nobody wanted to talk about the bizarre lifestyle of Bill Clinton and his sexual antics, but we ended up doing it. And so basically I came to the conclusion at that time, it was a very emotional time for me, clearly, and my coworkers, but I came to the conclusion that the Constitution was what I had to protect, not an individual man, the Constitution. So I followed what the rules of the law were. Eventually, when the Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist said I had to testify or go to jail, I testified. I followed the rules that they set in front of me. I only told them what I had to, and I went forward. I stayed in the Secret Service for 12 years. After 9/11, which today is the anniversary of 9/11, which is a very emotional day for the whole country. After 9/11, I transferred to the Air Marshal program. I thought that my skills I could put to use very good in the Air Marshal Service, and I did. I also transferred over, for lack of a better description, because of patriotism. I was angry. I wanted to keep this from happening again. And in 13 years, I flew about 4 million miles in 13 years, 4 million air miles. That's 166 times around the earth. I retired in March, and my God, I'm exhausted. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for every opportunity. And if somebody does get a chance to read my book, Crisis of Character, you'll see in it I'm not bitter. I tell the stories, I talk about the anger and the anxiety, but I'm grateful for all of it, good and bad. That's our history. That's my history. When I first started writing the book, it wasn't about politics. It wasn't about Donald Trump. Donald Trump wasn't even running when I started writing the book. In the meantime, Donald Trump whipped 16 other Republican nominees, possible nominees. He funded a lot of it by himself. That caught my attention. I spoke earlier when I was speaking. I talked about the Donald Trump that I knew growing up outside of Philadelphia. He's the Donald Trump has a great corporation, has a very good family, made a lot of money, gave a lot of money away. I talked to some of the people that I knew through my life, and actually one of them is an air marshal now, who worked for the Trump Corporation, the Trump Empire, in a couple of his casinos. And he always had good things to say about these people. Not until he started running against Hillary Clinton did anybody ever say anything negative about him. I even remember him being interviewed by 60 Minutes years ago, over 20 years ago. And even his competitors in the construction industry couldn't say a bad thing about him. They said the worst thing about him was he was so squeaky clean, he was hard to compete against because you couldn't hold anything against him. So that's the real Donald Trump. My book and my story, my life story, and his run for the Oval Office has kind of crossed paths. His people tweet my book, and his supporters tweet my book on Twitter very often. He actually read out of my book. That was a very proud moment for me. I am definitely a supporter. I want him to win. I think he will help turn America around. I've seen us take many bad paths. The most important thing, and one of the reasons I wanted to write my book, was I wanted the American people to know who the real Hillary Clinton was. The real Hillary Clinton is a cold, distant, angry person. She clearly, and I document this in my book, Crisis of Character, clearly has a disdain for the military and law enforcement. She terrorizes her employees so badly. I mean, if you saw the way that I describe in my book, that she talks to her employees and treats them, if you walked into a restaurant or the auto body shop, the mechanic shop that fixes your car, and you saw him and treating his employees like that, you'd run. You would never take your car back there. Same if it was your doctor. If it was your doctor, you would report him to the medical association. It says a lot about people, the way they treat their employees. And what Hillary Clinton says about the way she treats what I saw, me personally, and other people. In one of the stories I talk about in my book, Hillary Clinton becomes so angry sitting in a limousine, she takes a Bible and punches a Secret Service agent in the back of the head with it. Now, what could justify that? Now, was I sitting in the car at the time? No, but I stood post with this guy 3 days later. Everything that happened that I talk about in my book was investigated by Secret Service inspectors. They came to this guy, and just like they did some of the other people that had stuff happen to him, and say, look, we're sorry, but this is the way she is. She hates us. What are we going to do? We can't charge her. She's the president's wife. They offered him to transfer to another part of protection, but he stayed there and he did the right thing and he kept protecting him. Now, I mentioned earlier how typically people don't talk outside of the Secret Service once they're employed by the Secret Service. There was no confidentiality agreement at the time. There is now. There's actually two. One started in 2004, and then according to my friends of mine that are still in the Secret Service, 3 days after my book came out, they made them sign another one. So I'm not proud of that, but it is what it is. It's about transparency, and it's about the truth. Do I think I'm breaking some rules, guidelines, kind of going back on my word? I do, and I'll have to live with it. But I still say it's the right thing to do. If somebody votes for her thinking she's the person that they portray on mainstream media, then it's a lie. And I'm just tired of the lying. So I came forward, I've written my book. What happens, happens. It's been doing well. People are getting it out there. I'm grateful for it all. I don't regret anything that happened or anything that I've done. I do feel bad for the people that the Clintons have left in their wake. All those women in Arkansas who he was accused of sexually harassing, or in some cases even assaulting or raping. I feel bad for them. I feel bad for former White House employee Kathleen Willey, who was so highly thought of as a volunteer in the Clinton administration that she actually was able to pick up the phone and get an appointment to go to President Clinton and ask him for, basically she was going to ask him for a permanent paying job because they needed the help. And she got over there, and according to her, he assaulted her. He tried to grope her. I believe everything that she said. I saw her testimony. I worked there for years and years and years, thousands of hours. Everything that she said rung true to me, based on what I knew about the president, his behavior I'd already seen, and the pain that I saw on her face. People don't make that up. So here's my question. If somebody took that same information, that same story, and a picture of somebody else and took it to a police station and said, this man did this to me, and the police heard her, and she gave that testimony just like Miss Willie did, on camera, like I'm doing right now, the police would investigate that. And charges could possibly be, you just can't say that it didn't happen or she's making it up. And that's what the Clinton machine does. They rip her apart. Before he assaulted her, she was one of their volunteers. She believed in him. And that's the thing that kind of hurts me too. I know it sounds a little corny, but she believed in his story that he told to get elected. And the truth is, he's just kind of a perverted man that seeks nothing but power and control. And I have no doubt that when the American people elected Bill Clinton, they got Hillary. And if Hillary Clinton gets elected, you're going to get Bill too. And my first thought is, if he ended up being the first husband in the White House, what steps would she take to protect the young women that work in the White House? People don't change like that. Those issues in your life, those mental issues or sexual issues, they don't change and they don't go away, regardless of age. And that does concern me. The other thing too is, how somebody like Hillary Clinton, who was 8 years as a first lady, 8 years as a U.S. Senator, doesn't understand you can't have your own server. Clearly she did that to hide what she was doing, which I believe is one of the things they were doing, is pay to play with the Clinton Foundation. I mean, that information is out there. I don't understand why the FBI director gave her a pass, but I hope that he did it because he knows that there's other investigations, and somewhere down the road they'll be held accountable. But if you're somebody who's seeing this video, or somebody who's not sure who the real Clintons are, read my book, do a little research, find out that Mrs. Clinton's first job was investigating former President Richard Nixon, and they fired her. Nixon was a Republican who had been accused of doing something wrong. It was called the Watergate scandal, the first scandal, and she was hired to be an investigator in President Richard Nixon's behavior. The Democrat that hired her fired her and said she was dishonest, that she lied. That's a significant statement. You fast forward to now, what's going on? Clearly, they're masking something about her medical issues. What we saw today on September 11th, the anniversary of 9/11, was Mrs. Clinton having some kind of medical issue and being whisked away. I saw the videotape. I'm a former Secret Service Uniform Division officer. I'm telling you, there's something wrong with her, and it's a shame. It gives me no joy to say this, but it's sad to watch the tape. There's something wrong with her. They're hiding it, and no matter what they say, this is the problem today, especially for me. No matter what they say, what comes out of that campaign or her mouth, I don't believe it. I don't believe any of it, because I know how dishonest they are.